Hey, this is Chadzilla, and you're here with the Iturrate podcast. We're here to talk about UFC today. The UFC's got a new show coming up with ESPN. They just signed a big deal. The Roy Jones Jr. thing's coming up too. But right now we're going to talk about ESPN+1 and their first show coming up with them with the new year, 2019. Devin, take it away. Tell us what's going on with this.
Well, the UFC is coming back to going back to the Big Apple. They're going back to Brooklyn, going to the Barclays Center. This is their first ESPN event, and it's headlined by a flyweight title bout between current champion Henry Cejudo and TJ Dillashaw. This fight was originally supposed to be on the UFC 233 card in Anaheim. That event's been completely scrapped. They needed a main event for their first card on the new streaming service for ESPN. So they brought that down to for the 19th on ESPN and moved some other fights around. But you basically have in this fight, you really have one man trying to save a division, I really think, because Dillashaw is kind of being brought down. There's been a lot of flyweights that have been cut from the roster. There's been a lot of inside baseball being discussed about cutting the flyweight division. It's not been profitable. Demetrius Johnson was traded for Ben Askren, so their longtime champion who just lost a very close split decision to Cejudo is now in one championship in Japan in Asia, and now they got Dillashaw going down there. Notice that he's going down to 25 to fight Cejudo, and Cejudo's not going up. And I think Cejudo, if he can win this fight, they might keep the division. But if he loses, I think that they're going to start planning to fold that division in. So, and it's a good title fight.
So talk to me, guys, about the cut first of all. So let's talk about that, because that seems to be the big news about this fight, other than the fact that it's an amazing fight. You got a gold medalist in Cejudo. You got Dillashaw, who's in many people's opinions the new style of fighter. He's the prodigy of what all fighters are going to become if they're going to be truly successful in MMA. Devin's really high on him, I know, and he spoke very highly of him the other night on one of our first shows with Devin. Tell me about the weight cut and how that can affect him. Miguel, you had some things to say about that earlier on the wage rage for the bettors that watch us. Talk about the weight cut a little bit, and Devin, fill in on that when he comes through.
You know, weight cutting can be a serious issue. I think we got two real high-level pros here. So even for Cejudo, he had some trouble making 125 in the early part of his career because you're getting to a point where there's a threshold where you're getting on the limit. So we don't know where Dillashaw's limit is, and that could be an X factor in this fight. At the end of the day, you start to get wearing down in your mind, right? You hear Chael Sonnen say, "I can lose 10 pounds in a day," and you get stories of cuts of that nature. But that's very different for a guy who's 135 pounds to go down to 125, because that's 7 or 8% of your body weight. It's a much larger percent for a 200-pound man, and it just should overall be more stressful. The other thing about Dillashaw, I agree that Dillashaw added something to when he won the belt and with his pair of fights with Garbrandt, and he's really been a guy who's been fun to watch during his championship years and championship run. But he's 32 now, and I don't know if that's the right time to start cutting down to 125. It could be a factor in this fight just for things. So I would wait for the weigh-ins and really get a good look at Dillashaw and see how it goes. And for Cejudo, he gets to say it the way you assume at this point. 125 is no longer a problem for him. But at some point, Cejudo may also, with a loss or if they do wrap up the division, we may see all these guys. We may even see this fight again at 135 pounds.
Yeah, I wondered, Devin, do you have any inside information, or do you know anything about Henry's cut? Like, what's his walking weight? Henry's 31 years old, so they're real close in age. And we all know this. We all know the older you get, the harder it is to control your weight. Now, he's a gold medal wrestler, so he's been cutting weight his entire life, literally since he was probably 4 or 5 years old. He probably started cutting weight. Who knows how long he actually wrestled and wrestled at his own weight. but at some point he started cutting weight. And so he's an absolute professional at doing that. Where does that play in with Henry now? Where does that work with him?
Well, I think Cejudo has actually missed weight before, though, and he
Right.
is a good professional. And he's made it very clear that he could go up to 135 comfortably.
Yeah,
And-
125 was a stressful cut for him early in his career. He didn't make it a couple times, and it may have even played a factor in a loss early in his career as well. So, I think it's notable that the two elite wrestlers that we really think of right now at a high level, which would be Cejudo and Cormier, the weight cutting can be such a sophisticated thing. You're talking about those guys, wrestlers, the two most elite guys with the two most extensive resumes. They've probably been cutting weight their whole time, and they failed. They didn't make it. They had problems with it. In Cormier's case, he had his kidneys shut down at the Olympics, and he didn't even compete. So you're talking about, it's the elite guys that push the limit, too. And that's what's a little bit, a flag that some people are raising about weight cutting, Like, what are those limits? So Dillashaw may be in that boat. Cejudo, we don't have to worry about at this point, I guess.
Well, and I think it also something to note is that DC, I really do believe, is better at heavyweight, and I think that we've seen with guys like Robert Whitaker, Anthony Johnson, Daniel Cormier, and there's been some other cases of people going up in weight class, even Conor McGregor to an extent, where they look better, they fight better. I think that they're doing better at a higher weight class. Cejudo, even if he loses this fight and they cut that division, he's got a home, and he's a top contender at bantamweight, no doubt. Like, he's a solid fighter. I think the more interesting thing with the weight cut is definitely Dillashaw. Like, how is he going to react going all the way down to 25? Like, and Cejudo's going to be comfortable. He's done it before. He just had he's looked really so much more impressive with his stand-up. I mean, this is a guy who got into MMA late. He has not been training MMA long. And he had a really good 3-round scrap fight of the year contender with Benavidez a couple of years ago. He was dropping Wilson Hayes before his Mighty Mouse fight.
True.
And he looked pretty solid against Mighty Mouse. And he was timing those takedowns well. And he looked a lot more comfortable on the feet than he did in the first fight when Demetrius just kind of blazed through him and dropped him in the clinch with some knees. That didn't happen in that second fight at all. So I think that he's a live dog in this fight with Dillashaw. But then there's the big but about Dillashaw is just this is a guy that he's had some performances that just make you wow. Like this guy is the new breed of the way he'll mix up feinting for takedowns to high kicks to switching stances to to southpaw to right hand to mixing in takedowns with it. I mean, his evolution since he's been with Dwayne Ludwig has been incredible. And who he is now, the way he blends the whole package together and his transitioning, he's going to be a hard guy to try to play that style with. I'm going to try to time you, take you down, control you. I don't see Cejudo being fast enough, sharp enough to be able to withstand the kind of striking accuracy that he's going to have to deal with Dillashaw.
Imagine what I'm just to put this into perspective. Imagine what you guys just said. Basically, in a nutshell, what you just said is this: an Olympic gold wrestler, an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, who's wrestled since he was at least 4 years old. And that's all he's ever done. He's never really had a real job. He's coached or wrestled his entire life. He's been sponsored so that he can do nothing but wrestle. And I know he's had some little jobs and stuff, but really, those jobs were really to kind of hide sponsorship if you get right down to it. And I'm not trying to pull his covers or anything like that, but we know that's how things work in the collegiate level so that athletes can train and get the best in the U.S. and still have their amateur status and all that stuff. But, so they get a little envelope of cash every week from somebody who wants to back them and says, I'm backing you because I want you to be the best. They get all their supplements free and that kind of stuff. A guy like that, we're saying, probably doesn't have much of a chance of taking Dillashaw down because Dillashaw's footwork is so good that you just, how do you get Dillashaw against the cage to rough him up, push him against the cage, change a level, and pull his ankles out from under him at the heels? How do you get Dillashaw square to square, shoot through, and take a double on him in the middle of the cage? It's just, it just seems like it's almost an impossibility. So anyways, anything to add to that before we move on to something that I'm interested and want to talk about in this fight as well?
I kind of want to add to what Devin said that, if they do sunset the division, it does look like a lot of talent will wind up at 135. There's another flyweight fight on the undercard that has, pretty high-level talent. I like Chris Benavidez. He's been a top contender, and I think with Demetrius Johnson out of the picture in the weight class, Benavidez, if they keep it, Benavidez would be a guy who would be a natural for a title shot if he gets by Dustin Ortiz. Ortiz, one of those guys that's just he's had some exciting fights, and I always like to see him fight. He hasn't broken through, but Benavidez is going to walk in there as a favorite on that one. But I think that there's hope for both these guys at 135 as well, just to continue on the theme. What do you think of that fight, Dev?
I think it's a solid fight, and then I also saw recently that they just signed Benavidez to a 4-fight contract.
Oh, great!
And that's showing some kind of sign that they might not be getting rid of this division.
Yeah, and dedication to the guys. That's cool.
Well, another thing is Cejudo was on with Helwani on their New Year's Eve show, and he's definitely marketing himself as a champion better than Demetrius did. Demetrius has nothing to be ashamed of about his fight, his tenure as champion. I mean, it was an incredible reign. He is not a boring fighter. But one thing he didn't do very well was media, and he didn't really sell that division like he should. Cejudo was actively out there campaigning to sell this division, and that's great for guys like Dustin Ortiz and Joseph Benavidez and Usumar for Mega and some of these other upcoming flyweights that they have. I like that division. I like the flyweight fights.
The little Pettis.
Yeah, little Pettis and. So we'll see.
It's good talent there. I don't know if I agree with that Cejudo is doing a better job than Demetrius. I think the UFC may be doing a better job with Cejudo than they did with Demetrius because at the end of the day, a lot of what is your media outlets and stuff, it's like there's the fighter's sitting at home and he gets a phone call. He goes, "Hey, we got a contract with you, and you have obligations to meet, and these are going to be those obligations." 9 a.m. to Today's Show. That's happened to certain guys, and that's when they realize the depth of their contract, right? But Johnson, I think, I don't know that he turned down a lot of appearances and stuff. I don't know the facts, but it would seem like I just think the corporation didn't. With Demetrius Johnson coming from Matt Hume's camp and Matt Hume's group, and then being cool with each other, not hot with each other. I think maybe Johnson didn't get the same opportunities Cejudo's going to get. That's all.
Why, Miguel? Okay, look, Matt Hume really well. The Wizard, Matt Hume, for anyone who doesn't know, is one of the greatest trainers and coaches in MMA. He was a judge for Pride, matchmaker for Pride. He worked for Pride for many, many seasons. Tell the world. Why is it that, what do you suspect it is that was going on there that would have separated Demetrius from the UFC in that way? What's the quandary?
To be honest with you, right there, you're talking about egos. You know what I mean? It's like Matt has been taking fighters to the UFC for a long time. If you go back to the record, his fighters would include people like, go way back, like Ivan Salivary, Dennis Hallman. Yeah. There were a couple other wrestler guys that were a little bit bigger. I'm not going to remember their names. But
Josh Barnett.
Josh Barnett. There's another. Barnett was away from him after first UFC run and stuff. But yeah, but he's been there for a long time, and you get a way of he's an agent, he's a manager, and he's very demanding. And he demanded, a lot of stuff, and the UFC's put off by it. And then you got people who clash and stuff. And the bottom line is, I think, in the case of Ivan Salivary, I actually enlisted for 2 fights of his as his official manager because they didn't even want to deal with Hume. Now that's in the long past, but now Hume is the matchmaker for one. So at some point they're going to keep him at a distance and not really embrace them or that camp, completely. I don't know if that's the right thing to do for the sport. That's where, sport kind of separates itself from, from MMA, and you get more people get to do what they want to do. So I think here, hopefully Dana backs Cejudo or whoever the new champion is at 125, and I think they'll find a division with highly skilled guys that could be a front-running division. So more power to it.
Hey, listen, guys, we've burned up a whole lot of time on this. I hate to do it because I'd love to just do nothing but talk about this division, but we've got a whole card we want to cover here. So, okay, let's just do it. Greg Hardy. Devin, take it away.
Well, there's been a lot of controversy around him coming in. That's
an understatement.
Let's be fair right off the bat. This man is another freak athlete that the heavyweight division really does kind of need. The heavyweight division is, we've talked off air, Chad, about it. It's kind of an embarrassment at this point.
Yeah.
Is
he Lesnar freakish? Is he John Jones freakish?
Not with the background in a specific discipline that's applicable to mixed martial arts like Lesnar, because Lesnar was a very decorated college wrestler.
True.
And but pure athletic ability, he's a big man and very athletic for that weight. But we were talking, about right now in boxing, you've got probably the best era of heavyweight boxing coming into fruition in a long time, with the big 3 up there at the top with Joshua, Wilder, and Fury. Well, and you look at the UFC, and they're still recycled their top 10, even with Overeem and Dos Santos, and Mark Hunt was still in there for a little bit. They're still recycling a lot of this older talent that are still just fighting each other. And the weakest, most embarrassing division in the UFC, bar none, is the heavyweight division. And it's good to see somebody like Cain Velasquez coming back, but fresh faces, fresh talent is something that division desperately needs. But they finally get somebody that could be that type of talent, but he's just riddled with controversy. He's got a pretty checkered background. He's got a domestic battery case against him. He's fighting on. They went through him for his debut on the card with one of their female fighters that was a victim of domestic battery. It's just either they planned this to have controversy just for the PR attention, or they're just very incompetent, and this was just a really horrible decision that they didn't think through. I'm guessing probably the prior was more likely.
Do you think there's a possibility that they're trying to show that Greg Hardy is a changed man, and they're going to try and show that they'll do sort of a pre-fight promo of him and show, they're going to, this guy's had all kinds of problems.
Wait for it.
He's reborn. Do you think they'll do that?
I think they're just going to ignore it. Dana shot down any sort of questions from the media about it at all. He's been actually kind of a prick about it, and just acting like that's just irrelevant. It's not even something to talk about. And I think that's more likely is they'll just completely ignore it and just promote him of who he is as a fighter and a potential star in that division.
What do you think, Miguel?
Yeah, I think it should always be exciting when you get a heavyweight that's, an athlete and that is notable and then, you get all the asterisks involved here, and some of the shine starts to come off of the acquisition. I think I completely agree with Devin in terms of Chad, one of our favorite themes here, the conspiracy theory. Yeah, I think I think you go to Rachel and you say, Rach, we try to turn this into a positive for domestic violence also. Here's an extra little bit of money to put up with the hassle, and when you get asked about it in the media, just say it's in the past and don't say anything. Greg, we're going to run with this, and when people put two and two together, and if they don't, they leak it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when people put two and two together, they already had a little story in the defense, and it does blow things up. The fact that the guy was on the Dallas Cowboys, I guess.
Yeah, but that's something I want to bring up, though. Consider this for just a moment. If you're on the practice squad on the NFL, on the Dallas Cowboys, you make a minimum of $150 a year. To be on the practice squad, that's working 4 months out of the year to be on the practice squad. So I don't know what Hardy's making on this payday, but it's got to be somewhere around probably $500,000, maybe. I haven't looked it up, so I'm not doing my due diligence here. But the point is that I don't know what he's making on it, but he's not making anything even remotely close to the money he was making in football, because he was a huge, huge star. He was with the Carolina Panthers initially, and they couldn't get him in line. So the Cowboys took him on and said, hell yes, we'll take him, because he was that good. And the Cowboys jumped on him and said, and I'm a Cowboys fan for life, so fair weather or not. So they took him on, and they tried to get him in line, and they just couldn't get him in line. They wanted him badly and needed him and had to cut him. They had to cut him due to UFC or due to NFL policy. So when you think about that, when he has to be cut due to NFL policy, man, that says an awful lot about a guy. And NFL policy is obviously significantly more strict than is the UFC's. But nonetheless, think about the pay cut that this guy has had to take to go in and do what, I don't know, it's got to be much, much harder to fight than it does to play football, I would think. But maybe not. I don't know. Maybe at that level it's so, you just take so much abuse that, maybe I'm wrong on that. But, I don't know. So Greg Hardy, anything else to say on that before we move on to the other ones, guys?
No, I think basically what you're going to see here is you're going to see a case of delicate matchmaking until, if he starts to show progress, they'll bring him along and stuff. But until then, he's going to be in matches that he's going to be a favorite against a guy with possibly lesser than UFC credentials.
Yeah, I think you'll see him with Derek Lewis pretty soon. I think that's who you see him fight pretty soon. A Derek Lewis kind of fighter.
They could escalate to that, and they could risk putting him in there with a guy who's at the end of the day pretty one-dimensional. So yeah, sure.
Yeah. Anything else on that one, Devin?
I don't have anything.
Okay, so the next part we've got on this then is let's go to the ladies then and talk about Paige and Rachel. Devin, you've got a lot on this. Tell me about this fight. It's a pretty complicated. Just take it.
To be completely honest, Chad, I like it in women's MMA. I'm a fan, and I typically do have a lot to say. But when it comes to this fight, I don't really, because I don't see these two being top contenders. I don't. And Van Sant, I like her. She's young.
Why? Why don't you like this fight?
I can jump in there. Chad, you saw Shevchenko.
Yeah.
You saw what she did to Rose.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Joanna.
Yeah.
What do these girls got for that?
Nothing.
And especially in the case of Van Sant, where because she's marketable and came up with a little bit of a name. At one point there was the hope that she might be a poster girl type of person, but she's really undersized for this weight class and against Shevchenko. I just don't see it as being a fair match, So yeah, this fight's an interesting match, but Van Zant's not, moving up is not a good move in this case in my book.
No, and I think they're really just kind of promoting her. They're still hanging on to her. I mean, at first it went to trying to throw her on pay-per-view, then it went to she can headline a fight night. now it's like, well, we can kind of throw her in the mix there on a fight night and just throw her out there in the promotion because it's basically just because of her appeal as being a very beautiful girl and being on Dancing with the Stars and stuff. But for the most part, this fight is. I don't think this is going to have any significance on the top of the division, and I'm not. I mean, I'll watch, and I think it might be a decent fight, but I think it's going to be irrelevant for the big picture of that division.
So
I do think we.
Am I fair in saying to wrap this up that the Van Zant fight is more of the circus appeal? It's more of the CM Punks. Is it more of that? She's pretty.
Yeah, both girls are pros. You got to give them credit.
No, I'm not taking that away from her. But would she be there? Listen. Here's the final question on this, and we'll wrap this one up. Would Paige Van Zant be the co-main event in this show, ESPN's very first show with the UFC, on a free fight? Would she be there right behind Dillashaw if she looked like?
That's correct.
Me with blonde hair.
Actually, you really look a lot like Cyborg, Chad.
Okay. If Paige Van Zant looked like Cyborg, would this fight happen?
I'm trying to get you to laugh, dude.
Chad, I do think there's one thing we need to throw. I don't know how much time we have left, but I think there's one thing we do need to throw out there in appreciation going into this is the fact is this is the first show on ESPN.
Yeah.
And I really do think the UFC has made good business moves over the past 15 years. Like, right at the height of the reality TV show popularity, they came out with The Ultimate Fighter. Then, later on in I think it was like 2010, or 2011, the Fox deal really did mark a significant turn in the history of the UFC from a sport that was once not allowed on pay-per-view was now on network television. Yep. And now that era is over, they're going into the ESPN and getting into streaming, which is definitely the way of the future. And it's cool to see them on the most popular sports network. And I think that, $1.6 billion deal over 5 years. They're going to get so many they're going to lose some casual fans off the bat that had cable packages that don't have this, but they're going to gain new ones that, are buying ESPN Plus for different sports and stuff. And, I think this is going to be a great move for the UFC. And, it's impressive how they continue to make business moves that keep them ahead of the game and keep them just owning this market of MMA in the U.S.
We went through a technology show, or we did a technology episode way back when DAZN very first came out. Like the very first time we saw DAZN was maybe, I don't know, it wasn't even Wilder. It was some boxing event that they had, a smaller event, and DAZN did something with MMA and boxing together maybe, and they did it on the same weekend, and we talked about it. We came on and we said, and we didn't even know what to call it then. It was called like, DAZN or something like that. We didn't know how to pronounce it. And now everybody knows it's DAZN and everybody knows what you're talking about. So we know the takeover is happening, and it's pretty interesting. Anything else, Miguel? You got that look on your face. What is that look?
I was just going to point out, Devin and I did another podcast that you can check out on Bellator where we talk a little bit about what's wrong with Bellator's business model, and I think Dev just hit on it again. That the UFC was, with Bellator, they're sitting on with Viacom and stuff, and it's like, hey, DAZN's looking for material. Viacom looks down and says, you can't even, we don't even consider that. It's competition, right? So they're kind of stuck, and they don't have that, whereas the UFC says, hey, we'll do them, and what do they want? They want 20 shows a year. How's our calendar look? All right, we're in. And they're, like he pointed out, able to make those types of deals. That's why, Bellator isn't even in the conversation. So here's the first event. I think you can see the one fight we haven't talked about, just to get it in real fast, is Cerrone and Hernandez. Yeah. I think with Cerrone on the card, Dillashaw on the card, Paige Van Zandt on the card. They mishmash together a few of their marketable faces, people they put some marketing dollars behind in the last couple of years, put them in the Barclays Center and put them here for the big card. So I think, those three faces are there because the UFC's invested in them and wants them, to be poster type people. Van Zandt, probably a little bit more advanced than she should be, as we pointed out, but that's what it is.
Well, listen, guys, I think we got to wrap it up. We've hit our 30-minute mark, so as usual, we've gone over. Sorry about that. Hey, listen, we appreciate you guys. If you like what we do, tell somebody else. If you don't like what we do, tell us so we can fix it. Hit the little red button. Hit the little red button right below and hit subscribe, because when you subscribe, it allows us to continue what we're doing. We appreciate everything. We're glad that you guys keep stopping in. Our numbers keep piling up. We grow every single week. We get more and more subscribers, and we're super happy about that. Devin, it's great to have you on our first ever three-way podcast here with Miguel Iturrate and MMA. Check out the Wage Rage. Check out the Outside the Cage stuff. We're developing more and more of that kind of stuff. We are also looking for one more commentator, analyst, to come in. So if you're interested, hit me on the message boards. Talk to me about it. I'll see if you're the kind of person we're looking for. We love and thank all of you guys for being here. Until next time, namaste.
I don't know if you wear this or not. Maybe, I don't even know how to begin with this. So I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to be blunt, going to be frank, because why not? Because, it's frank. Quit doing that! Straighten up! Okay, anyway, just for the record, I'm not putting the fucking truck away! Sit the fuck back down! I'm not putting the fucking truck away.